April 1915, prominent Armenians in Constantinople were arrested. Then the Special Organization, a paramilitary organization made up of criminals, was given orders to carry out the genocide. While the government issued temporary laws to paint the operation as a series of measures to transfer populations and seize the possessions they left behind, on the ground the first phase of the genocide was now unfolding. Following a carefully planned timetable, and starting with the Armenians in the eastern provinces, between May and August 1915, the secretaries in charge of the special organization, aided by killing squads known as butcher battalions, chete, demanded support from government officials, police and gendarmes for their program, encompassing issuing deportation orders, slaughtering the men, and deporting the women, children and old men in convoys, decimating the convoys, and massing the survivors in concentration camps around Aleppo. There they were joined in the autumn by families of Armenians deported from central and western Anatolia, often by train, who had survived massacres carried out in their towns and villages. Finally, in a second phase of the genocide, these deportees were evacuated, in conditions that ensured that most of them perished on the way, to Ras Al Ain and Der Zor, where the last survivors were murdered. A third group was sent south to concentration camps in Syria, where some 200,000 of them survived. The Genocide Convention, adopted by the UN in December 1948, defines genocide as the crime of killing with the intention of destroying a national, ethnic, racial or religious group, and is designated as a breach of international law. Through this act of genocide, the Ottoman government murdered all the Armenians in its eastern provinces and most of those in central and western Anatolia. Nonetheless, a third managed to survive. The Ottoman Empire's borders had been closed since its entry into the war, except for Armenians who sought refuge in Bulgaria, some of the Armenians of Van who followed the Russian army after its retreat in August 1915, and Armenians in Smyrna and Constantinople who were exempt from the deportation order. A section of the survivors in eastern Anatolia, 100,000 out of 1 million, therefore owed their lives to the actions of humanitarians, diplomats and Muslim saviors, whether they were Ottoman government officials, Kurds from rebel tribes, or simply ordinary people. These government officials knew that the government was enacting a relentless plan for total annihilation, and that the Armenians were condemned to die. The small number of them who refused to carry out these orders were not unaware that their resistance would only be effective if they could count on the support of prominent local figures. They knew and accepted the risks they were running by disobeying orders, but they viewed it as their moral duty to do so. By invoking a higher principle of conscience, that of their duty of disobedience, they renounced their obligations to the Ottoman government. For some, this duty was derived from the Islamic concept of justice, adalet in Ottoman Turkish, which, as Fatma Müge Göçek explains, constitutes the framework within which Muslims judge human conduct as just or unjust. It is not unreasonable to wonder, however, whether these officials were only obeying the precepts of Islam, or whether they were acting out of simple humanity, as did Jews, Christians, and non-believers. Whatever their motives, they acted on them. These people were the people of conscience of the Armenian Genocide. While many Kurdish tribes had been indoctrinated by the Turkish nationalists and took an active part in the genocide, a few tribes who were traditionally rebellious, such as the Kurds of Dersim, took in their Armenian neighbours and protected them throughout the war. Deserving a special mention are the Yazidi Kurds of Sinjar, which became a mountain refuge and enclave of safety for the thousands of Armenians who managed to reach it. In a grim reversal of history, a century later Islamic State forces committed genocide against the Yazidis in the Sinjar region. The actions of these rescuers are described and documented in this book, in which they are designated as the righteous and people of conscience of the Armenian Genocide.